Okay, everybody, welcome again to Munro Live Podcast, and I'm here with Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, who's also normal, as you can see by his hat. So this is, to me, a very exciting time. So, Tim, thank you very, very much for coming on board. And for those who kind of like only look at cars, can you give us a little background? Because there are people out there that just look at cars. So it'd be good if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm a car guy through and through. So I'm there with you. Grew up loving cars and motorcycles, working on them, wrenching on them, fixing them, tuning them, racing them. Yeah, so that's kind of, I like things that go fast. And when you eventually get to the end of that food chain, I think you end up at rockets. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing faster and more powerful than a rocket engine. So I have, throughout the past about 6 or 7 years now, just kind of slowly become more and more obsessed. I don't know about slowly. I'd say rather quickly become more and more obsessed with rocket propulsion, with rocket technology, with space flight, human space flight, exploration, and all of that kind of thing. And I've been, had the pleasure of going behind the scenes with many rocket companies, seeing how they are, building and working on rockets, including Rocket Lab in New Zealand, SpaceX's Starship Factory in Texas, Firefly in Texas. Recently, I did Ursa Major rocket engine company out in Colorado. Just had a great Stoke Space in Washington. Just had an awesome time visiting a lot of these companies and seeing how they're doing what they do. And then also, of course, I love attending launches and seeing these things fly because there's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah. Well, you got me there. I haven't had a chance to see any rocket launches. I've worked on, actually, we have 3 things in common. Both of us have talked to Elon Musk. Both of us have been at SpaceX and walked through the magic there. Mm-hmm. And both of us are like Bill Gates, college dropouts. So so we got it all. I mean, it's like magic or something. Yeah.
Yep. Kindred souls here. Yeah. I mean, It's easy though with rockets. It's easy to fall in love with them, even if you don't know what you're looking at first, because they have so many facets and things so many of those things of like, why this? And by the time you figure out the whole reasoning behind it all, you just get 30 other questions going. Yeah. And every one of those is its own journey. And I find that process to be extremely fun.
Well, I was brought into rockets mainly because they wanted to have a different opinion. So, and they had forgotten a lot of stuff. So when I started working with NASA, all the rockets to the moon and everything, I guess nobody could find the prints anymore. Nobody knew what was going on. And so consequently, what wound up happening was they had to try and recreate what they had done in the, 50s or 60s or something like that. And really and truly, looking at how things were then with just paper and pencil, these guys drew all this stuff. There was no CAD and there was no computer-aided design, and there was no computers. Getting the job done to me is totally mind-blowing. And so we went in and started looking at the stuff they had literally laying on the ground to figure out how to get to the rocket ship stage. But when it came to many of the components where I thought, hey, you know what, this could be made a whole lot simpler. A big negatory there. They absolutely flat out would not change at all. And I have no idea why, but all the changes that we suggested, I mean, when I got a chance to go through SpaceX, there they were, all in place. Welding everywhere. No, you can't weld. No, it's not possible. Okay, good. And there it is. And they welded everything at SpaceX. All the canisters and whatnot. Everything's basically
all the interfaces. Yeah, very few flanges, lots of welds.
No, just welding, and that's a good idea. Gets rid of weight, strong as hell. And by the way, NASA never had a rocket ship that was possible to land. In fact, I remember hearing a great big 45 minutes of crapola about how you can't make a rocket ship come down like in the movies. So much for that.
Yeah. Well, but don't forget DCX. The DCX program by Lockheed Martin in the 90s actually did develop, and that was a little bit of a skunkworks project, but they developed they were the first to kind of show, we can do propulsive landing. Now, obviously they were doing it at a, subscale size and, not coming back from, especially with the Falcon 9, when that thing's coming back in, it's already gone, Mach 5. And it's out and it's made it to space. And it turns around and comes back. I mean, it's incredible, and the forces and all of the engineering behind making that thing propulsively land. And now we're coming up on almost 200 consecutive landings of that thing. It's just insane.
It's amazing to me. And this is where, as far as I'm concerned, strongly held rules and regulations, they really block your vision for the future. And I think that's why it just couldn't happen anywhere else, except for Elon Musk. He doesn't have filters at all, I don't think. At least I didn't see any.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. And I think you're also kind of touching on some of the differences in engineering between, especially the U.S. During the space race, the 50s, 60s, and the Soviet Union. The Soviets really like to push hardware on the stand, see what breaks, iterate. They were not afraid of breaking things. Right. They were not afraid of trying 50 different things. And instead of trying to really kind of, I would say, pre-solve the problem, they really like to just kind of test something, see how it went, and then improve on what went wrong. And the United States has always had a little bit less of a risk-forward approach to engine testing and development. It tends to be, and especially with things like the F1 engine and the SSME, the RS-25 on the space shuttle, things like that, they really tried their hardest to minimize big changes. Once they kind of made up their mind on how this is going to go, it's almost like they forced it to work and work out all the kinks instead of letting the kinks tell them, which way they should go with the design.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous guy in the auto world named Boss Kettering, and he was a big fan of trying it, failing it, trying again. Finding out. He was the guy that really invented the modern diesel engine. He did it during World War II. And he was extremely big on trial and failure. And then later, and by the way, he invented fast-drying paint. He invented the electric starter, which basically killed the electric car for a long time. He invented Freon. There were so many things that he got involved with, and he was an electrical engineer, but that didn't seem to hold him back on anything. He was, as far as I'm concerned, one of my big heroes and an icon. He's not remembered like Sloan, because Sloan is, he's in business. He was the business guy, but Kettering made everything happen. Yeah. So.
That's cool.
Yeah, but you were saying that you're also a car guy. So, what are you thinking about the way things are going with cars? Where do you think that's headed?
Well, I mean, obviously, it looks like electrification is pretty much winning over, and just purely from a physics standpoint, and energy, just the idea of kind of wattage in, or or joules or potential energy in, and what you get out of propulsion. I mean, you're not going to beat, at least for any time in the foreseeable future. I'm afraid that just purely from that standpoint, from an energy management standpoint, the internal combustion engine is just far too inefficient. And as the infrastructure grows with electrical, with EVs, it's getting more and more exciting. It's becoming less and less of a scary thing. I've been road tripping since 2018. I've driven, all across the country, many, many times, from Iowa to Florida, and Iowa to Texas, and Iowa to Nevada and California. I mean, all over the place in a Model 3. And I mean, that's all solved to me. That infrastructure solved. And frankly, 99% of the time when I'm driving, it's a huge convenience factor to be able to wake up to a topped off vehicle and not have to worry about, oh crap, I was planning on getting there without having to fill up and stuff like that. So I see the trend just going more and more that way. And even as we see more and more companies moving that way, I'm actually kind of surprised that it's taken this long. I thought about 5 years ago we would have saw the ramp up we're seeing today.
Yeah, well, that's because, quite frankly, most of the major car companies have unbelievably good marketing people, and the marketing people have stemmed the tide. They've filled the news with things like, range anxiety. Where'd that come from? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know where it came from. And then biodiesel is better than electricity, and on and on. It's amazing what a marketing guy can come up with, and it's amazing what propaganda can do to slow things down. But I was thinking, what are your thoughts on the flying car, George Jetson kind of life? I think we're way behind the times there. Okay, so we got electric cars now. When are we going to get that VTOL that I so desperately need?
Yeah, you'd think we're getting closer now, especially just with battery density becoming it's improving year after year. With as far as watt hour per kilogram or per pound or whatever.
Yeah.
That's improving. You have really efficient brushless motors and things that are making these vehicles be able to be have some kind of decent amount of range plus a decent amount of reliability and all of these other factors. But again, I kind of think it's like they're all converging, and it seems like, I don't know, I'm expecting to see a flying car here and for sure in my lifetime. I'd really hope within 10, 15 years we have the opportunity to, at least if you don't own one, like, it would be not a huge deal or not impossible to imagine you hail one as as an Uber or a Lyft or something and hop in one, and it's they might only be hopping across a certain section of town or whatever, but I definitely think that's got to be in the future we're going to live in. I mean, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the first ones are going to be basically a shuttle between the airport and the center of a city.
Yeah.
Right now, Detroit Metro Airport, just today I heard one airport of the nation or something, or North America, best airport in North America. And that's 100% true, but there's no rail system to go from the best airport in the world to Detroit, or there's the only way you can get there is taxi or Uber. So having something else, having a VTOL to take you from Metro to someplace downtown Detroit would be absolutely, and now we've got, Detroit's one of the best cities on the planet to go to. So there's a lot of good things happening, but there's no connection between the best airport and a city back on the way up. And it just, there's no way you're going to put a rail system in. So so the flying taxi or whatever is to me, it's like totally logical.
Yeah, you got to go over, you got to go under. We know Elon's working pretty hard on trying to improve doing loops and things like that. And Las Vegas is the perfect example where, even though you're nice and close to from the strip to the airport, I mean, you're still talking about 15-20 minute Uber ride,
right? Yeah,
and you're right there. You're you're 3 miles, and
exactly.
It's ridiculous. Chicago's even worse. A city like Chicago, O'Hare Airport is 45 minutes to an hour downtown. It's so weird how I'm shocked that we're this far behind compared to Europe figured it out and I've never flown into a city, an airport where in Europe where I can't get downtown quick, easy, and cheap.
Yeah, right. Well, that was because they had rail systems that they built airports close to. It was a totally different mindset, right? But anyways, I look at the next generation of transportation, at least on the planet, as being something where we're going to jump into something that's going to pick us up and take us over and drop us off. But the one that needs it the most is LA. Oh my God. Oh. I spent 4 hours on the Ventura Highway. I'm just sitting there, going crazy. And the cab driver says, "Oh, you should have left 2 hours ago." 2 hours. And when I got in the cab, he said that. "I don't think we can make the plane." I said, "What? It's 4 hours. Come on, it's got to be." Nope, I don't think so. So, so there you go. But anyway, let's move away from the gravitational pull of this place,
from the terrestrial.
Yeah, and move into one of the things I'd really like to talk a little bit about would be faster than light. It's got the acronym now, FTL, but really and truly, not so many people, they think it's okay on Star Trek, but not so okay for real, but there's a lot of research on it. And apparently there's some loophole that Einstein left so we could, try and get from wherever to wherever in a fraction of the time. So where are you with basically warp speed, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Well, let me make sure and prime this with saying I'm not an astrophysicist. I'm not a physicist. Everything, and this is getting a little out of my normal realm, but I still love to talk about it because it's definitely a fun thing to indulge in. But I think sans some major breakthrough in our understanding of physics and of space-time, and specifically how to manipulate or how to distort space-time, I don't think we're going to be able to see any. Using conventional physics, it just always says that, if you have even the tiniest bit of mass, you'll never be able to reach, it just becomes exponentially harder that the heavier an object is to get closer and closer to the speed of light. So without us being able to warp the space and time in front of a vehicle and then, extend it behind it basically, or finding things like, if we learn about wormholes and things like that, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not going to sit there and go, oh, we'll never figure that out. Because I think 100 years ago, they would have absolutely been laughing at saying that people will just casually fly across the ocean, no big deal, and land on the moon. Like, they would have never seen what was coming.
Right.
In the same way, I don't know what the next 100 years of our understanding of physics, especially, now that we're studying gravitational waves, things like that with LIGO and some of the other, sensitive instrumentation, we're actually learning about gravitational waves. We're already seeing ripples in space-time and effects of that. And I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see if we figure some stuff out, but I'm not gonna. I wouldn't be one to sit there and try to figure it out myself because I have no idea where to even start.
Yeah, well, by yourself is impossible to do anything. I mean, anything basically requires a team of experts that really and truly want to move in the right direction. But it's funny you said that. My grandfather, he had kind of an interesting life. He he joined the Navy when he was either 9 or 10, and he was on basically a steamer sailor. So it was a kind of a very old type of, not a battleship, but a ship, some warship. And he went from basically steam and sail all the way through to watching a man land on the moon. I mean, you think about it, he went through so many different eras, all the way to the era of space. It was amazing to me. And to him, he kept talking about it. He says, I lived an amazing life. And he would talk about, all the different things that he saw going from a lot of people still had gas lights in their house. Yeah. Especially in Britain when, or it was either coal, I think they had coal oil or something, I don't know, something that they used, kerosene lamps and things, and then light bulbs and whatnot, and TV sets. Imagine no radios or TVs. That would be like, you'd be put on a big pile and burned to death like a witch. So it's amazing there that these things can happen, but I truly believe that if people get out of the way of people with new thoughts, new ways of doing the business, I really think we can get into it. And the reason for that is simple, right? Aliens. I'm good at math, and the basically the number of stars, that's a lot to count, times the number of possibilities that you'd get, a magic planet like Earth. Seems strikingly possible to me that that we should be able to communicate, or at least get close to somebody who's from some other solar system, and maybe they'll whisper in our ear and tell us how we can get there. That seems like logic to me.
I'm 100% with you as far as the statistical, I mean, statistically, we can't be alone. I mean, just from the raw data of, like you said, the billions of stars and then the billions on billions of galaxies.
Yeah.
And, even if the average star has maybe 5 planets, and if 1 in every 50 of them is potentially habitable, I mean, we're still talking about trillions of potential,
right.
Habitable planets in the known universe. And I now the idea of communicating with them, and I don't know if you've read like Andy Weir's book, Project Hail Mary.
No, I have not.
It's phenomenal. I highly recommend it. It is a little bit about this, and what's cool is that he took such an interesting approach about the communication differences that completely different life forms might take. Now he's Andy Weir is the one that wrote The Martian. He also has a book called Artemis about lunar mining and lunar settlements. But his book Project Hail Mary was just phenomenal, and painting this incredible picture about what it might be like to try to communicate with other life forms that in a way that I had never thought of. We'll just put it that way. I don't want any spoilers, but it's like, this is brilliant. And it kind of puts into the perspective, the idea that, who knows, maybe they have been, that there's people or life out there trying to communicate with us every day. And it's just in a way that we don't have the capacity to even understand yet. I'm with you, and I'm excited it does make me really excited to think about the idea of us being able to discover definitively other life forms.
Yeah, like I say, I've been kind of into this forever. From my earliest recollection, I used to think, there's got to be, if there's one here, there's got to be a whole bunch of them up there. And then when there was a guy named von Däniken that talked about ancient aliens and whatnot, and somehow they must have had, if that's true, and it sounds like they just found some more bones in a cave somewhere with little teeny people in it, and 60% of the DNA is the same as a human, so something there is going on. But you think about it, and you wonder if we just put things into our own kind of time frames or whatever. You wonder how. Okay, so Rome was like magic, right? Everything is going on. They got sculpting, they got paintings, they got giant buildings that they're building, and then they walk west and they bump into the Gauls, and in essence they live in caves and they weigh and they're wearing bear skins or something. They found some way to communicate, so it would seem to me that if there's some communication potential, we should be able to sort it out, unless there's something I'm missing.
I mean, it's to the point where I think it's, if we're talking about communicating via, human to human and, audible through the air transmission of vocal cords to eardrum, that's one form of communication. But if we're talking about, gravitational waves or something that we just aren't even barely able to physically tune into yet, as a species, like we're just now at the very, very beginning of even being able to detect a gravitational wave, let alone know how to interpret or know how to listen with enough fidelity to know. I mean, who knows how an alien species would figure out how to, especially if we're talking about vast distances, if you're talking about light years away, and if you want to actually communicate across a galaxy or across, the universe, you got to be able to figure out something that can communicate other than, the the spectrum, the standard spectrum of light, and it just gets really interesting. And I always go back to great claims require great evidence, but someday, man, oh man, are we going to have some incredible, something's going to pop up at us and smack us right in the face. And it's going to be a day to remember and a day to celebrate for sure.
Yeah. Well, I personally think that somehow, some way, somebody has come here at one time or another, because there are certain leaps that happen in civilization. I just don't see how that could happen via trial and error. And I've been a lot of different places. I'm kind of into these ancient locations, and when you look at it and go, I'm a tool maker. I couldn't make that. I mean, I knew how to make pretty much anything, and I can remember going to Bolivia and looking at a bunch of rocks, basically with internal patterns that I couldn't interpret it at all. And these things are thousands of years old, and they're razor sharp. How they did that is way beyond me, and how they stayed that way is even more confusing, I guess would be the right word. So,
yeah, I definitely, personally, I like I said, I kind of had to abide by the great claims require great evidence, but I do think that there's some. I wouldn't be surprised if someday, we have a conclusive statement of like, oh, you know what, we kind of put all this stuff together, and it does appear that, 5,000 years ago or whatever, I mean, that wouldn't really surprise me if we, if we put all that together. And and that could be a blip in time to another species too. The species might say we'll be right back, thinking like I'm going to the bathroom, a quick bathroom break. They come back and it's 5,000 years later, and who knows? That kind of stuff. It's definitely within the realm of possibilities. When you think about the great span of time and distance, it's definitely it's hard to fathom as a with our little peanut brains.
Yeah. Well, peanut brains. We might as well stop right there, I guess. Be a while before we can catch on. I don't want to get into politics. Peanut brains and politics. But anyway, you said you used to wrench cars and motorcycles. What was that like when you were a kid? What did you have or aspire to, or what have you?
Oh, well, it's always I live only about 5 minutes away from a decent drag strip, and a cheap one. I mean, it's like, it used to be like $5 test and tunes or $10 test and tunes, and now it's maybe like $20 these days, but still really inexpensive. Just north of Cedar Falls, Iowa, and it's awesome. So we'd take whatever we had out there. For me, it always happened, for some reason, it always wound up being a Mazda. I don't know why I was such a Mazda guy. They just would all fall on my lap. But I love turbochargers. I loved tuning turbos, and learning many lessons along the way about maybe a manufacturer's design a transmission and a differential for a certain amount of torque, and when you double that amount of torque and beat the crap out of it, you shouldn't be surprised when there's gears bouncing down the track. And it turned to, of course, in the pursuit of speed, it became motorcycles, and I would race, just do drag racing of 600cc bikes up to liter bikes, and just purely recreationally, just for fun. Didn't get too serious about the trying to do it in any way other than just basically adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I had a 650 Bonneville, a Triumph Bonneville, and I'm surprised I'm still alive. I have no idea. I mean, between it went rocket ship fast when you could get it started, but then when you tried to get off, your legs were dead. The vibration would somehow kill all of the veins and arteries in your legs, and you try and get off, and the whole thing had come down on top of you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I had this bike that was terrifying. It was a 2004 and 2005 Kawasaki ZX-10R. Had the shortest wheelbase stupidly short wheelbase. I think after that they made it longer. And the first gear's red line, I kid you not, you can look it up. I mean, it's been a while since I looked it up, but it was 104 mile an hour first gear red line. Like,
first gear.
What is the point of that?
Okay, wow, that's way beyond anything. I'm telling you, I was always scared shitless of a wobble, like a front end wobble, and I had friends who spent a lot of time trying to have their skin glued back on after a crash of some sort. So I kind of moved away from it, but I did in the interim. I got a chance to drive a Ninja. One of my buddies had that short period of time, That's when you find out you're old. You try a bike like that, and the guys won't let. Actually, not the guys. My wife won't let me. We had a couple of electric bikes in here, and the guys who drive bikes every day said, "Well, we put it in rain mode first, and then drove it back and forth. It's a lot faster than you think." And you know, somebody said that, I don't know who it was, but somebody said that I can't remember how it went, but anyways, we're sitting in the parking lot. We're looking at one of the bikes, the Spark, I think, or something. I don't know which one. But anyways, we're looking at it, and some guy goes roaring by, and gone. And then one of the guys turned around and said, Star Trek Enterprise does not make any noise, and it goes a lot faster than that guy. So. And that's kind of like what I've been saying for everybody nowadays. Yeah, they're sitting there. They had the Woodward Dream Cruise, and yeah, wow.
It's funny how electric propulsion has changed. Again, as you know, as I hope I've explained, I love cars. I love going fast, and I love all that stuff. Love the noise. I get it. I Formula One. I love Formula One, and seeing the cars trackside and hearing them, and it's incredible. But, these days, whenever I see like I don't know, in Iowa, I'm going to see a ton of trucks, and I see some kid in a, Silverado flooring it. It's making all this great, ridiculous sound. And to me, it's become, and in my head, I've almost branded it unintentionally or not, as the sound of struggle. You just, it's like they think they're making, it sounds like it's doing so much. And you look over and it's like, oh, it's only going 32 miles an hour. Like, it's like, where's back in the day that used to be such an impressive feat, and now it's like when you're just silently giving it a quarter throttle and you're flying past a vehicle, it's just trying its hardest and making all this great noise. It just kind of puts it into a different perspective of like, oh, that's not actually that appealing. You know what I mean? Like it used to be.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that I flew by somebody in a Ferrari. Really looks like it, it really looks like it is going to be rocket ship fast. Anyway, he was screaming by me, and kind of, I wouldn't say he pissed me off, but he definitely caught my attention. And luckily my wife wasn't with me, so I just went over and I thought, you know what, I'm going to tail this jerk, and I did. I went right up and I almost kissed his bumper, just to see if he's a real sport. Or not, but I didn't. Anyways, I'm sitting there, and then I thought, you know what? We are going relatively fast. But anyways, I thought, I'm just going to see what I can do about passing this guy. Let's see if he can, what he's got. And I looked down the road. There's nobody there. It was like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night or something like that. There's virtually nobody on 75. So I just gave it what I wanted. I just pushed the pedal down, and I went zipping by this guy. And I mean, it was like I ran by him so quickly. I couldn't believe how fast I passed him. And so he's coming up in back of me, and unfortunately my cutoff is coming. But he couldn't initially. He couldn't get to where he wanted to get to, even though I know that his RPMs were high enough and he should have had plenty of torque. But it just didn't. It didn't have what it needed or wanted. So then I got off, and I'm sure that, as he's going down the road, he's going, how much did I pay for this damn piece of shit? I got beaten by a Model 3? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Yeah. So.
Well, let me tell you, I rented I've driven a Plaid Model S for a good amount of time, and I rented a McLaren, let me think, it was a 570S. Just a dream car in a past life, I guess. And still, but I still absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
But the McLaren felt slow. The McLaren felt properly like, this is fun, kind of go-karty fun.
Yeah.
But nothing compared to a Plaid Model S. Like that's just on a different, they're playing two different sports. One's playing, T-ball, and the other is playing professional.
Exactly.
I guess we'll change sports completely, football or something. Like it's totally different, and it's wild. Yeah.
Well, what's really funny is so there's a lot of guys either my age or a little bit older, and I've worked with them forever, and they were big time executives at lots of different car companies, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, BMW, all kinds of. They won't get in an electric car. They will not get in. I'm not no. And I think the reason is because they're afraid once they go in and try it out, then they're going to realize the future is not going to be gasoline and stuff. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you one of my favorite stories too about this kind of stuff was Tom Mueller at SpaceX. He was the head of propulsion.
Yeah.
Basically invented the Merlin engine, the Kestrel engine, Super Dracos. Incredible engineer. And, he's a big car guy too. He loves Porsche. He's got multiple, 911s and GT Cup cars that he races and a Z06 that he races, big car guy. And when Elon was working on the Model X, actually, the SUV originally, he basically at one point told Tom, he goes, just to let you know, this SUV will spank any of your cars. And Tom's like, no way. Your big, ugly SUV. And he goes, well, how about this? Let's take him out to the Hawthorne Airport, which is right at where SpaceX is
exactly
in Hawthorne.
Yep, yeah.
The runway. He said, let's race them. And if the Model X beats, bring whatever you want. If I beat you, you have to buy one. And let's just say when I hung out with Tom Mueller, he had a Model X.
Yeah.
Because he lost that race, which is, I think, just hilarious. So, but to that point of, people feeling like they're making a mistake, it's kind of made me wonder when you clearly see the trends, and you see all this stuff, at what are these meetings like behind the scenes where they're like, all right, well, this is going this way. Our sales and our stuff is doing this. Why aren't they making that decision to change and jump on the train? Is it because there's so much risk in switching over and there's already the investment of the current technology, or like, why wouldn't you pivot?
There's so much involved here at the end of the day, what it boils right down to is you're looking at, we've done this for over 100 years and they're ingrained into it. So I don't know if you're aware of it, but my job at Ford Motor Company was engine engineer. I helped develop the Vulcan V6, the Penta, the Mark 1, or sorry, not Mach, what was it called? Anyways, a bunch of different V8 engines, 4-cylinder engine, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And after getting into an electric car, actually, I was on the EV1 team, and I was sold. And since then, I've worked on other engines like the Pentastar and things like that for Chrysler. But I will tell you that once you have a taste of honey, it's tough to go back to vinegar. And that's basically what happened to me. However, that is not the case with everyone. Some people have been so emotionally invested in noise and gasoline that it's impossible for them to make that transition. There's an expression. There's a fellow by the name of Joel Barker. He's a Dr. Joel Barker. He's a futurist. He's got a PhD. He's got a lot of really cool videos out that talk about why people do what they do. He's a psychologist, I think. Anyways, or a psychiatrist, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, he prefers to be called a futurist now. And he has a saying that I use continuously. When the expectations don't match the results, people physiologically cannot see the data. When the expectations, and that's for people who have strongly held rules and regulations. So if you've grown up with cars, and I will say that happened to me as well, but I think I'm the exception. When you grow up with cars and the roar of a big V8 and all the other stuff that goes along with that mantra, you have a real hard time considering moving to something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it's all boiled right down to. So when I talk to little kids like 7 to 13 or whatever, basically what would that be, babies to adolescents or teenage. Those folks don't think at all, and it doesn't matter whether it's boys or girls. They don't think at all like their moms and dads. They hate the smell of gasoline. They have no concept of ever buying a gasoline car.
Right.
And in 5 years, those 13-year-olds are going to be 18, and they're going to be buying electric, and their parents are going to probably catch on after that.
On the idea of hard to overcome, I think half the problem with the adoption of EVs, and especially originally the hybrids of the early 2000s, in my opinion, the biggest problem we ever made as I guess as a species almost was trying to sell hybrid technology as green and as economical. It should have been looked at as, this is the F-150 torque boost package. You're going to get you're going to be able to tow more because this has 200 pound-feet of torque in this little tiny thing. Not only that, guess what? Your brakes aren't going to wear out as quickly because now it has regenerative braking. And beyond that, just so happens you might actually get 8 miles a gallon better. Like that should be the after thing. It should first be, this will make a faster, better, more powerful truck. And especially, that offset, the differential, the delta between truck's fuel economy, if it's a V8 versus a hybrid potential, it has the most to gain as far as fuel economy versus taking an economy car that gets 40 miles to the gallon. Now it gets 48 miles to the gallon. It just doesn't make as big of a difference overall. So I'm just shocked that we didn't start there with the biggest problem. Make it cool, make it powerful, make it something that people wanted. And I think that the whole thing would have been turned on its head. It was almost like a branding issue. If we made it this weenery little, the slowest, cheapest car you can buy is now getting incredible gas mileage, and it just didn't sell a lot of people on the idea. And there's still a lot of people that see it that way. And that's one of the things that I'm so impressed with Tesla, is that they've really pushed to make it fast, sexy, and cool. And it is slowly turning that, now you have like the Rivian truck, I think is one of the best looking trucks on the road.
Yeah.
And just have plain cool factor, the overlanding stuff and all that, just plain cool. Like, we should have started there though. Like what the hell were we doing for 20 plus some years? So it's just stuff like that drives me nuts when it feels like we kind of went backwards on things,
Well, that's why I really like Ford Motor Company. I mean, they saved my tail. With the F-150 Lightning saved us. We plugged it into the building and suddenly let there be light. Oh my God. So there's different kinds of trucks. So we also have a Rivian, and I love that truck, no question about it. But is it a work truck? I don't think so. That's great for around the house and stuff like that. And, going to the store or picking up something at a lumberyard. And for an individual, that's fine. But that is not a construction truck. But the Lightning is. And that, to me, I mean, there's a lot of stories about people who've been absolutely delighted with the Lightning. They plugged it into the house and it's got reverse charging, so the house was lit up in the neighborhood. Everybody else is, dead in the water. So I see the Lightning as Ford's example of what you just talked to. Why in the world would I want to pay astronomical amounts of money for gasoline when I get electricity for like 12 cents a kilowatt or something? That's what we're getting around here. I mean, are you kidding me? It's the difference between like $350, $400 in gas versus probably somewhere around maybe up to 50. Woo.
Right.
It just and no maintenance. I mean, we've got guys. We got one guy here, F-350 diesel, whatever, blah blah. The wife took it with a horse trailer and whatnot. They basically kind of like went off the road. The cost to repair the thing is astronomical. Mm-hmm. Holy doodle. Mm-hmm. I mean, and how'd you get it home? We borrowed the Lightning.
No way.
He did. And we've got another guy that his daughter has horses. And so he uses the Lightning on the weekends, takes it wherever she's riding horses or whatever, and then brings it back. And everyone's, well, you'll never make it home. You're going to have to stop for an hour, 2 hours, 10 days, to get it charged up. And it's one charge, basically. It's just there and back again. Yeah.
People always come up with the most extreme use cases for their lifestyle for their vehicle purchase. Like I had a good friend where, once a year, basically his family drives out to Colorado from Iowa. It's about 10 or 11 hours, on a conventional vehicle. And he's going, well, we can't get an EV because we go to Colorado every year. And I'm like, first off, you have 2 cars. So keep a gas car for that one trip a year for your other car or whatever. And I go,
why don't you just rent it? I mean,
rent
really?
it, whatever. And I go, and then worst case scenario, you're talking about the one time a year where you're going to be driving for 11 and a half hours, and now it's 12 and a half hours or 13 or whatever. Like, so you're deciding your purchase on this one use case where every other day you're going to wake up to it full. You're never going to go to a gas station. Like, how are you this short-sighted on this extreme case where it's not even that big of a deal? It's maybe a 10%, 15% less efficient trip versus 100% efficient every morning of never having to go to a gas station. We're pretty short-sighted, I think, on some of these things. And
but the press pumps it continuously. That is their job in life, to try and figure out how to kill the electric car. And the reason for that's simple. You know why they're doing it? So there's no money in it for them. None. So you never see the Lightning or the Rivian or whatever advertised on TV. It just doesn't happen. Why? Because they don't. That's $600 down the rat hole. That's what it costs on average per car for advertising. So who advertises is the one who wins, right? It's like, you can't get a good politician unless you got a big fat wallet. It's the same old over and over and again. And marketing comes to the forefront every time. Hey, how are we going to discourage people from buying an electric car? Well, we'll make up some more new words, and people, they see and they believe. It worked real well for propaganda's worked real well forever. Forever.
Back to the F-150 Lightning and construction and stuff. You'd think it wouldn't be long before too many contractors or construction companies just run the numbers and say like,
oh, they did.
It'll only take us 12 months of difference to pay the price off, and then after that, the vehicle's saving us money or whatever the numbers are.
Well, it's an investment that has a return on investment, but they are. Ford has got the one plant, and now they've got another one that they're going to be making. I don't know, someplace down south, Blue Oval. But at the end of the day, they don't open plants for grins and giggles. The one in Dearborn here is 150,000 and it can crank. I have no idea what the one down south is going to be, but both of them are going to be electric F-150 something, or maybe not the F-150 Lightning, but whatever it is going to be called, it's going to be an electric truck, and that's what they're doing, and everybody else is scrambling.
Yeah.
So
Ford. Of all the traditional, U.S. manufacturers, it definitely feels like Ford was pretty quick to be pushing towards the EV trends, and I think they've made great vehicles like with the Mach-E and all of that stuff. It seems like they're going in the right direction. But I was looking at some trucks and stuff and thinking about if I'm in the market for a truck someday, what would I look at? And I was actually pretty impressed with the Silverado's specs. Being 200, I think they're putting a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack in that thing.
Yeah.
Just purely for the idea of it. If you literally look at like that or the F-150 even as what's cheaper to back up your house, being Powerwalls, Tesla Powerwalls, which are 13 kilowatt hours or whatever. If you bought 10 of those versus bought a single F-150 Lightning, you basically get a free truck with the F-150
exactly
Lightning,
right. And that's what people don't quite get. So I have 3 Powerwalls in the basement, solar enough to keep us going for who knows how long. But I didn't have 2-way charging. I only had the Tesla, and Tesla doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. If things would have been different, or if I would have been putting it in now, there's no way in hell I'd buy anything but something that would give me a charge in both directions. And looking at the Lightning and knowing that it just it saved basically I can't imagine how much that workshop would have cost the customer. They flew in people from Europe, China, all over the damn place, and all over here in North America. And everybody shows up, and Monday comes, and Auburn Hills has got no power whatsoever. But there's something I do want to touch on. I mean, we can talk about electric cars all day long, but I don't actually get the chance to talk to the Everyday Astronaut. Everybody's kind of like probably interested more in the moonshot that you're going on. Maybe you could give us some background on that.
Yeah. So I was chosen to participate in a mission called dearMoon, which will be a flight around the moon. We won't be landing on the moon. We're going to do a lunar flyby, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, I would be totally fine with anything. And to be clear here, to kind of tee this up, this has never been a thing for me. Like I was not that kid growing up that wanted to go to space. I was not that adult that grew up thinking I was going to go to space or pursue it. Even as I'm developing the channel and talking about spaceflight constantly and stuff, it still wasn't like a thing that I was trying to do, really. It's just sort of, to be honest, like the opportunity kind of came up as like, they're asking for, basically to me, it feels like Willy Wonka for space, where an individual, named Yusaku Maezawa, we call him MZ, a Japanese entrepreneur, had purchased a ride around the moon in 2017 already from SpaceX. And believe it or not, that announcement of someone buying a seat to go around the moon is the reason that I started the YouTube channel in 2017 to make a video explaining this exciting announcement that someone bought a seat around the moon. It was like the coolest thing. So literally that's the first time I like set up a camera and just, made a video explaining something. It was only 3 minutes long and I'm yelling at the camera. And it's a horrible video. Please don't find it. But that inspired me to get into this a lot more deeply and start explaining, and trying to explain things about spaceflight. And come to 2021, and they had an open application because it kind of changed. Originally, it was supposed to fly on the Falcon Heavy here with a Dragon capsule on top. SpaceX, come about 2018, 2019, they basically said, hey, we're not going to crew rate the Falcon Heavy. And they moved Yusaku's flight off of a Crew Dragon capsule, being able to hold 2 people and on a Falcon Heavy to, hey, we're working on Starship. If you just give us a few years, you can fly however many people you want, really. Realistically, this thing can hold dozens of people comfortably because it's 1,000 cubic meters internally. The internal volume's more than a 747's internal volume for pressurized volume. It's freaking huge.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. And they basically said, give us time. If you wait, you can choose as many people as you want. And so it turned into this mission called dearMoon, where he wanted to, in 2018, did a call for, saying we're going to be inviting artists and dancers and communicators and photographers and filmmakers and musicians, all these different things. We want to bring these people. I want to invite them to come to the moon with me, basically is what he said, as a way to inspire and reach the world in a way that's never been done before. And that was kind of the last we heard about it until about all of a sudden 2021. They're like, hey, we're actually going to do open applications for this. And that was news to me. At this point, I thought it was all going to be invite only. Here's a well-connected individual that I thought was just going to be calling up, James Cameron and, LeBron James or something. I have no idea, calling all these people up on the phone and just saying, hey, I'm going to take you to the moon with me. And that was going to be the end of it for the average person. Come to find out, though, in 2021, he did an open invite saying submit an application and a video application. And they went through over 1 million applications. And
yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Through about, it was a long time. It was about 9-month process. They whittled it down. A whole team of people whittled it down. And now there's basically 8 of us that were chosen then to go around the moon.
Wowzers. So what sort of preparations do you, I mean, in the olden days, you used to see this thing spinning around with a guy going, why did I sign up for this stuff? But do you have to do anything, or is it just kind of like, grab a couple of pairs of underwear and you're on your way?
So it's not quite as simple as, say, some of the modern space tourism with, the suborbital things like Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin with their New Shepard. It's not quite as simple as, show up a day early, learn how to strap in. and then enjoy the ride. Basically, this is a lot more involved. We don't know. We don't have our exact training regimen down. Where I think we're at this point, we're still waiting for Starship to mature enough to be able to, have the systems in place to really know how the training is going to go and how, all of the things involved there. But if we look at the other commercial missions, such as Inspiration 4, Axiom missions, it tends to be about 6 months, and those are Dragon missions that have been private missions so far. It's been about 6 months of training, and I'm kind of in my head, I'm thinking it'll be around that amount of time, even though we will purely be tourists. Like, let me make it clear, we're not training to be professional astronauts, blah blah blah. We're basically taking a joyride, but when it is a trip around the moon, there's still a lot of considerations and a lot of things that we'll need to know how to do things safely and how to safely operate and live in a vehicle for a week.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like brilliant. I think it's just absolutely fabulous that somebody with a lot of money is going to do something with it that, except for self-gratification. I mean, that's kind of what you usually see. But there's very, very few, what would I call them? I don't know, just leaders that pop up. You got Elon, and man, it's a short list. Like in the car industry, we were talking about Ford, but Jim Farley, I mean, nobody knows anybody else in the auto industry. Nobody. I mean, if you ask people, some people might say Mary Barra because she's had the job for a long time. But man, the last time I saw her was when she announced that she's going to be using the Tesla charging system. Everybody else is in hiding. Nobody knows she's in charge of BMW or Chrysler or whatever. And nobody knows any of these because they're not leaders. Yeah. They're kind of like, got that little office. They don't get out much. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's funny, the spaceflight aspect, I don't know if it brings out the best in some people or if it's just because it's that you had to be kind of at the top to be, reaching for something so audacious as spaceflight. But there's been some incredible people come through. I mean, Jared Isaacman from Inspiration 4 and now Polaris 1, 2, and 3. I just was doing fighter jet training with him last weekend in Montana, and he's ridden me around in a MiG-29 with afterburners pulling over 7 Gs.
Wow.
And yet the guy is the most down-to-earth, one of the, the greatest leaders I've personally ever met. And I think, in my opinion, they raised $250 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital with their mission.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the coolest things ever. He's not only doing that, but also they're doing a study to see if, as a private company and as a private mission, they're trying to fix, repair, and reboost the Hubble Space Telescope totally free to the taxpayer, which to me is like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so it's just so cool between, Jared, what he's working on and what Yusaku's doing with his generosity and inviting people to, to experience something, to share that with the rest of the world. I think we're just coming upon this time of, I hope that people feel that, the celebration of that and the excitement and hope and joy, because I think it's something to be excited about.
Well, this is the thing, though. I mean, most of the guys that you hear that are incredibly wealthy, what do they do for society? I mean, I gave away some money, and then you work out the taxes. He gave it away so he didn't have to pay taxes, so blah blah. He probably wound up with more pocket change than he needed. And yet, you've got other guys like this fella here that rates for St. Jude is one of my. I give to quite a number of charities, and St. Jude is up there. Them and Salvation Army get probably the most of my money. But at the end of the day, you don't really hear about people. Danny Thomas kind of guys that he's the one who started the St. Jude movement. You don't hear too much about them anymore. They kind of they vanished, so they could buy another big yacht or something. I don't know, but to me, every time I hear about somebody like this, I just think there's somebody going to heaven. Got a whole bunch of money, but I think the gates will open for this guy. Yeah,
it's just fun too to just see the progress, to see that. That there is commercial interest in some of these space missions, and it's not just multi-billion-dollar NASA missions.
Yeah.
And obviously nothing against NASA, because that's why we are where we are today, and actually set up the commercial crew program, which really helped usher in the possibility of any of this stuff. But man, it's fun to watch it where there's actually, people buying these missions, going, doing exciting things in space flight, and actually not only that, but actually pushing the boundaries.
Right.
Through the commercial sector is really cool and really exciting. And I hope that people, I hear a lot of things about, like billionaire joyride types of things. And I understand the cynicism there, but when we kind of step back and look at where we're going to be in 50 and 100 years, I think these are going to be the history makers here.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that made SpaceX happen is actually one of the biggest catastrophes that ever happened to me, when the banks melted and everybody, and basically everything got defunded. Obama was just, and he had no other choice really. But anyway, scratching all these things, and one of them was NASA. So all the brightest and best with the lowest seniority wound up out of a job, and Elon snapped them all up and took them away. And there you go. So, and if you're bright and you haven't been tainted by, when we can't do that, you have to do it this way. And he just said, hey, give me your best way. And the next thing you know, you've got, the best rocket ships on the planet. Actually, the only rocket ships on the planet now. Actually, no, there was India. Great news with them landing on the moon. Fabulous. Mm-hmm. I would have never guessed in a million years. I mean, I worked on Intelsat. I used to be kind of in space, and I worked on several different satellites that they had, but they were using Russian and Chinese canisters rockets to get them up, and now they're, tragically the Russian module didn't fare very well, but India, I think, should get a big round of applause for what they've accomplished. That's an amazing feat, really, to me.
That's on my list. I have an ongoing list of videos that I've just can never chew away at quick enough, because it just keeps perpetuating, getting longer somehow. But the history of the Indian space program is so fascinating, and it's so incredible what they're able to do with not a big budget. They're doing really big things with a tenth or 100th of the budget sometimes in some situations. And Chandrayaan 3 was just an incredible mission, and it's so fun to see the country rally behind it too and get excited and inspired by it.
What country wouldn't? I mean, really, that's what countries live for, is that kind of razzle dazzle.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people from India that say how big of an impact that's had on school kids, saying, I want to work in this space. I want to be a rocket scientist, and I want to. I want to work on the next big mission in India, and what that actually can do to a generation. It's more than just nuts and bolts and throwing a pallet of cash into the air. It actually comes back down here on Earth, and it inspires people to do better, to push harder. And that's what I love about spaceflight, is that whole aspect of it. We're pushing the boundaries, and it all it does is makes us smarter, better people because of it.
Yeah. Well, I have several guys from India here that work at Munro, and they were trained, educated, and whatnot in India, and you couldn't ask for better engineers. I mean, bar none. They're brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's hard for them to get into the United States. I don't know. I mean, we're struggling to try and get guys. We have some people from India and some from China that are trying to get. It's a real monster of a mess.
Yeah, it is, really disheartening to see people, especially in the aerospace industry. It's even harder. If you think it's hard to get someone in the automotive industry, imagine trying to bring talent in from other parts of the world to be able to work on aerospace. It really quickly runs into ITAR concerns, the International Treaty of Arms and Regulations. And I think it needs to start changing, because the times this is no longer the Cold War, and we're no longer as worried about rocket technology being a vector of nuclear arms, because we already have that problem. Like, that's already a done thing. Everyone's figured that out. That now that's of a concern. So at this point, I think it's in our best interest to actually bring talent in and foster it and help. If we're thinking about our national security and things, I think we actually want to be bringing more people in that are talented, instead of having them figure that out somewhere else.
Well, people forget Benedict Arnold was born in the United States. and he turned out not to be the guy that everybody was hoping for. I wanted to touch on something else though. You went through SpaceX manufacturing and whatnot. What was the couple of points that you saw that were unexpected? Things that you didn't know that they were going to do, or things that the way they built it or the way they designed it that struck you as being, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I've been watching this stuff, every nut and bolt basically move across the factory since it was a dirt field.
Yeah.
So many things didn't necessarily come to me as a surprise, except for if I kind of take a step back, if we're talking about walking through the factory, yeah, there's some surprises about how the system's actually going to work out and things. But for the most part, the biggest change and the biggest crazy thing to me is, contrary to what's normal, I guess, where you build a factory and then you build a rocket. This is almost the exact opposite. They built a rocket, then started building a factory around it.
Yeah.
And they started building the factory to be able to figure out, how we can do this most efficiently. And, it's really interesting that we're seeing a time where not a lot of people talk about Blue Origin, which is, Jeff Bezos, his space company. They have a huge factory and a huge presence down there in Florida at Cape Canaveral. And we're all waiting for that sleeping giant to wake up, because they did it in the more traditional sense. They built a huge, beautiful factory, and then there was nothing in it for years and years and years. And you're waiting for, the design to solidify enough and for them to get all the tooling and everything ready. And SpaceX went the other way. They went, we think we kind of know this is what we're going to do. Just start welding, start bending metal, start figuring it out. And you just feel like they have this mantra of, don't wait, or waste steel, not time. You can just tell they're in a race against time, and nothing else matters. Even if it means redoing something completely. They already knocked down a handful of, buildings and temporary structures and things like that, as they're now making this all a little bit more finalized. And it's just so backwards from what most people, I think would conventionally think to build a rocket and build a factory. Yet they're cranking them out now. I mean, they're able to produce an insane amount of these rockets.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There are two schools of thought. One is the one that is shoved down our throats since forever, and that is cheap. Okay? Everything's got to be money-based, and it's got to be on the cheap. But if you look at those people who have truly succeeded, they put more emphasis on time. And as you get older, time becomes a lot more precious. And I think there's a song that says, time's running short, spend it like it was gold. And I'm telling you right now, spending your time like it was gold is a lot smarter than basically, well, first we got to get the lowest possible price. And, while you're wasting time trying to find the lowest possible price, every day the seconds are ticking by, and they turn into hours and weeks and months and years. And I've seen so many programs go down the rat hole because we had to follow procedures. And procedures, to me, are the biggest waste of time. If you have people that are dedicated to the program, they are not going to rob you of a single nickel. Mm-hmm. Look at how you want to get your program done. Basically, you should have a sketch in your head. But if you start thinking, now, how do we put this into, a good accounting term or a good business plan? By the time you get done, somebody else will have beaten you to the punch. And yeah. But for me, when I went through
Starbase,
Starbase, the thing that struck me was how many rules and regulations that Boeing and all the other guys that we worked with had, and they were all violated. Just ridiculous, stupid rules. You should have seen how they were making this plating. It was like a hexagon plating. Looked like a giant beehive. And they said, well, this is the only thing we can do. It can't be stronger than this. So how about stainless steel? Because I made the calculations, and basically by the time they were done, it was better to use stainless, which is what they use, and weld it up than it was to use this crazy chemical etched material. Just, are you kidding me? And then the rockets themselves, like I said, they or you had mentioned, they fixed on a design and stuck with it forever. So it's amazing to have the freedom, the latitude to be an engineer and an inventor and entrepreneur all at once. And that's what kind of was the crowning effect for me. Going and looking at Starbase, it just, man alive, this is the real dream here. The real way things should be done.
It really feels like, when you see these almost dystopian futures and you see people just banging on rocket ships, like Star Wars in some junkyard, just fixing up an old thing, and they're welding it on the spot. That's what it feels like, because they're just hands-on working on things. And, it was a big shock in 2018 when they're working on Starship. At the time, they're calling it BFR, and it was going to be carbon composite. And all of a sudden, by the end of 2019, all of a sudden, or 2018, that's when we saw it switch to stainless steel, because of how quickly they could make changes and iterate on it.
right.
Literally, if you need to make it, 3 meters taller, okay, just add another ring. No big deal.
Yeah.
You weld it together. You don't have to change your tooling and change any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And because of that, we've seen it, the progress of this vehicle just go like crazy. And it's been really, really fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of carbon fiber for many things. Airplanes is a good example, but I'm not so much a fan when you start looking at rocket ships, and for the same reason as those guys that were on the Titanic viewing submarine or whatever. It doesn't like to be cycled a lot, and it doesn't like pressures, and there's a lot of things that it doesn't like. So for that, I can move away and say I'll take the extra weight, and I'll go with stainless. But I don't think they even had the extra weight. At the end of the day, when you started looking at all the nuts and bolts and rivets and everything else that goes on to try and make the old-fashioned rockets, the weight is probably much, much less. All I had to do is basically wrap the pipes around, weld them up, and away they go. And you know what else I thought was really funny was watching the crew come in the morning, because most of the welders are Mexican, and they come walking across the Rio Grande that looks basically like it rained last night, and there's a puddle that's just virtually nothing there. It was like really wild.
Yeah, it is incredible. I mean, and the big thing to keep in mind too when you're watching all this stuff happen is, what we see today is still pretty rudimentary, but even between in April they flew Booster 7 and S-24 for the first time, and we're coming up hopefully this fall or early winter we'll see the next one, which is Booster 9 and Ship 25 fly. Yeah. And although they might look similar, they're actually a massive upgrade between the two. And the next one we'll see on the pad will be a massive upgrade from that. And by the time we actually get to this thing flying regularly and flying commercial payloads and eventually passengers, it won't even look anything like what we're seeing today. Probably it'll be so refined and awe-inspiring, I think, compared to kind of what we're seeing now. But what we're seeing now doesn't really matter in the long run. They just got to learn, they got to fly, they got to test, they got to build, and that's what they're doing. And it's super fun to watch.
I think it's just absolutely amazing. And the same thing is reflected in the cars. Okay, so being signaled here. But anyways, the same thing is in the cars. Like if you look at how fast they went from, Sandy says 120 parts is goofy and you should have one part, and the next thing you know, they got 3 parts for the rear of the Model Y, and then a few months later, and it's 1 part. And then a few months later, it's like the whole front end of the car and the whole rear end of the car. You couldn't get that out of, certainly you're not going to get out of General Motors. There are so many procedures. So many people have to stick their nose in it. The hierarchy to make a decision like that, most engineers would go, I just looked at how many people had to sign off on this, and I've decided I'm gonna buy a small shop and sell ice cream cones. And I use that example all the time, but that is a real deal. One of the guys that was a brilliant engineer, and after frustration after frustration, he left. He was in Chevrolet. He just left and said, and he has this little ice cream place, and that's him and his wife, and they've got 4 or 5 of them now. But he just walked out to sell ice cream cones, and that's what happens when you get frustrated. You're an engineer. So, but anyways, I have been signaled twice now. So the third one, and she hits me with something. I don't know what. But anyways, you know what, Tim, this has been absolutely as good as I thought it was going to be. I'm a happy guy to be able to talk to you, and hopefully we can do this again, especially when you come back from circumnavigating the moon. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be my pleasure. Absolutely. It's been an honor to talk to you. Been a fan for a long time, and love your breakdowns on things. So I learn a lot of lessons watching you dissect stuff. So it's been really fun for me too.
Well, this has been a great afternoon for me. I hope that everybody listening is as excited as what I've been all day today. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll hopefully get Tim back on the program. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Yeah, anytime.
Bye.
My pleasure.
Bye.